Here we have ourselves a trade update between the Detroit Red Wings and the New York Rangers that I'm going to be honest is kind of taken me by surprise. I didn't expect to be talking about these two teams today, but it works because both of them are absent from NHL game action tonight, which gives us some room to breathe now, doesn't it? For reference, this is what we are referring to. It's Elliotte Friedman on 32 Thoughts earlier this morning, who went out there and said that the New York Rangers are looking for a new power play quarterback with Adam Fox out. One name that Friedman has heard is Erik Gustafsson of the Detroit Red Wings, who is currently playing in the AHL. Gustafsson was decent for the Rangers in 23-24, with 6 goals and 31 points in 76 games played. So, Adam Fox replacements, eh? Well, lucky for you, Chris Drury, Erik Gustafsson happens to be one of the guys that I think can fill that very specific role that you might have for him. And I say that fully knowing that he is in the AHL and that he pretty much got outplayed to lose his spot in the National Hockey League this season. Here's the thing with Erik Gustafsson. If you bring him over and you expect him to be a regular, run-of-the-mill, bottom-pair defenseman who can do the things that a bottom-pair defenseman should be able to do, then you're in for a bad time. Erik Gustafsson doesn't really provide much of the typical bottom-six defenseman qualities. He's not necessarily the most amazing in his own zone. He doesn't block many shots. He's not the most physical. He isn't really the best skater. But what he does do is man a power play pretty well. And I think there's no season that exemplifies that even more than Erik Gustafsson's 2018-19, where back when he was in his prime, he had scored 60 points and 17 goals in 79 games played as the #1 power play quarterback for the Chicago Blackhawks. It was kind of a weird time for Chicago. You still had Kane, Taves, and DeBrincat over there, but Duncan Keith was getting old. He was no longer the #1 option on the man advantage, and Gus just had some immediate chemistry there with Kane, DeBrincat, and Taves. So it was a really good season for him. Unfortunately, he was not able to replicate that and inevitably got shopped around to Calgary, Philadelphia, Montreal before going back to Chicago and then going over to Washington, Toronto, the Rangers, the Red Wings. Yeah, look at that, eh? What a run. The guy hasn't spent 2 seasons on the same team until now with Detroit, and heck, you could even say he's doing it a little differently this time around because he's in Grand Rapids now. He's not even in Detroit. 9 points in 12 games with the Griffins to open up this season, on pace for about 49 in a 65-game campaign. Not great, but hey, it's the AHL. The fact that he is slightly under a point per game there checks out with his offensive profile. But Erik Gustafsson is a guy whom if you tell him, hey, the only reason we have you employed is because we want you to go out there every time we get a man advantage, that's pretty much his bread and butter. It's what he excels at. He draws players into him very nicely, and he's got some good playmaking. So Gustafsson, for all of the inadequacies that he brings outside of the power play, he can be a pretty effective user on that man advantage. And it seems like the Rangers, with their Adam Fox-less roster, they are interested in getting one of these guys. For reference, if you head over to dailyfaceoff.com, their power play unit, first one at least, looks like this. Will Cooley, Vinny Trocheck, JT Miller, Mika Zibanejad, and Artemi Panarin. Amazing. They're going with a 5-forward setup. No defenseman in sight after Adam Fox lost out on some time due to injury. Fox was doing really well this season, by the way. Like, I know a lot of people like to dog on Fox because he won his Norrises and then just kind of faded away from that conversation, but he was a point-per-game guy. He was still doing some really good work, and obviously we know the talent that exists in Fox when he is on his game. The Rangers losing out on that certainly is a big hit. Second power play unit for the Rangers, according to Daily Faceoff, is Lafreniere, Brodzinski, Laba, Sherry, and Scott Morrow. So it seems like Morrow is the only D-man who is getting any sort of a power play role with this team at the moment, and that makes sense. Scott Morrow was a very good offensive defenseman in his prospect development, but, I mean, yeah, what other options do you have? Are you going to give Carson Soucy a power play role? Absolutely not. That sounds like a terrible idea. Braden Schneider? I guess he's top pair, but do you want him playing there? Gavrikov is in a spot where I think he's tasked with everything else outside the power play, so you might be overworking the guy a little too much if you tell him to do power play as well. So, hey, it makes sense that the Rangers could be interested in any sort of a quarterback, but Erik Gustafsson, I mean, you're going to go over digging into the AHL to try to get your solution there. And that's not to slight Gustafsson. I think there was a realistic chance that he could have made the Red Wings this year. It's just, with Axel Sandin Pellikka coming in and essentially filling the same role, plus being better overall, there was always going to be some competition internally for Gustafsson to get prime-time NHL minutes this time around. And so, when you think about the Rangers trying to go out there and improve their team in that way, obviously Gustafsson makes sense. What the trade could look like, I mean, you're probably looking at some sort of a later draft pick. It's not going to be too expensive. I don't think the Rangers would be too keen on shelling out anything more than maybe a third or a second round pick to get Erik Gustafsson onto the team once more. Plus, his contract is expiring at the end of the year, too. He's making $2 million a year at 33 years old, so not really the most grand of commitments to make to a player once you trade for him, but if you are going to give him power play time, that is where he's going to earn whatever contract he gets next, so you better make it a good one if you are the New York Rangers. I also do think it's kind of funny how the Rangers, after trading K'Andre Miller away for Scott Morrow, seem to refuse to use him when it's like, hey, isn't this exactly what Scott Morrow could do? He's an offensive defenseman at heart. He's a guy that moves around in the same way that Fox does. Why not use him on the power play? He's also right-handed, for crying out loud. Scott Morrow could be the answer to all of the Rangers' problems on this power play conundrum, and I'd probably wager a bet and say that he's more effective than Erik Gustafsson is right now. Unless you wanted to go strictly off of AHL point production and say, hey, wait a minute, Gustafsson, near point-per-game AHL guy. Morrow, on the other hand, only has 3 points in 12 games with the AHL's Hartford Wolfpack. If that's your reasoning, then I think that's kind of misguided, considering Morrow had a lot more points last year, and he was an NHL productive player with the Hurricanes. I do think there's a really bright future for Scott Morrow in the Rangers organization, but if the Rangers feel like now is not the time to cultivate that, then, okay, be my guest. Send over a draft pick to the Red Wings, I guess. I mean, Detroit could stand to use Gustafsson, too. If somebody or two or three guys ends up getting injured, I mean, Travis Hamonic is already a bubble player who's getting some playing time. Next in line, I would assume, is Erik Gustafsson, so if you wanted to go down that path, you could say there's some value, but at the end of the day, I do not really think that Gus has been too impactful for the Red Wings this season, and if the Rangers want to shell out a draft pick to get him, be my guest. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this trade idea, and what other power play options do you think the Rangers would have at their fingertips outside of the ones that already exist in their organization, like Scott Morrow? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 9, and bye.